There are a lot of indicators of whether you're showing up to your relationship in a healthy way or not. But one of the ways that you can tell is what you do when your partner has nothing left to give. Who are you when your partner is peopled out? You're listening to Sex in Real Life, honest conversations about sex, intimacy, and relationships after 40. If you're tired of tips and tricks that don't address what's actually happening in your body and in your bed, you're in the right place. Hey lovers, this is Stacy and welcome back to Sex in Real Life. Today we are talking about what it means to be the kind of partner who can stay emotionally available when your partner isn't available for sex. Okay, let's get into it. Now, I originally planned for this episode to be about just being peopled out. And then I had an epiphany that that's an important angle, but I also think that it's important to be the kind of partner who can hold space for that. So that's what we're going. That's where we're going today. So not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago actually, I had one of the best days. I caught up with one of my closest friends first thing in the morning. We talked for like 4 hours. I'm talking about deep conversations, existential topics. Like we laughed because we do that. I mean, it was kind of like one of those chicken soup for the soul kinds of conversations. It was really, really good, so nourishing. And then later that afternoon, I stopped by my granny's house and one of my family members from out of town was visiting. So I got to have more conversation. I mean, we laughed so much that my gut ached. But later that evening, by the time I sat down for dinner, I felt sick. I felt sick, not in a like queasy, nauseous kind of way. It was just, I was so exhausted. And it wasn't because anything bad had happened. It was a great day. I enjoyed myself. Do you hear me? I thoroughly enjoyed myself, but I was completely empty. And we could have a whole conversation about introverts and extroverts, but I feel like I'm kind of an ambivert. So in social settings, I am very expressive and talkative, not shy at all, but that's not how I live. That's not how I live. So again, in social settings, I show up, I engage, I hold deep conversations because I don't know how not to. I laugh, I can be fully present. But in my regular life, I need quiet and solitude and I recharge away from people. Not because I don't like people, I love people, but that's just how I am wired. So I need space, to replenish. And maybe you're in a relationship with somebody who functions like that, or maybe you're in a relationship with an extrovert who does recharge with people but also gets tired. Like it doesn't really matter. Introvert, extrovert doesn't really matter. That's just me rambling. But what do you do when your partner comes home after a day like I had, just tired and spent, out of gas, nothing left to give? Like who do you show up as? And this is where things can go one of two ways. Either either you understand what they're experiencing and you hold space for that, or or you take it personally and make it about you and apply some pressure even if it's subtle. Now, in my case, my partner gets it. He knows when I can be like that. He's not as much of a social butterfly as I am. He's a lot more introverted than I am, but he understands who I am when I'm around people. And in fact, he loves to see me in social settings. He loves the kinds of conversations that I end up having with people. Like that gives him joy. But he also knows that there's a lot of energy expenditure for me. So when I come home depleted, he does not make it complicated. And when I say home, we don't live together, but I live part time over there. It's a whole thing. Anyways, but I have been in relationships where the other person didn't get it. And that's a completely different story. But with my current partner, when I am feeling exhausted or depleted, drained, and I'm not available for sex, because that's often the case when I feel like that. Like I couldn't hardly eat, let alone get busy, right? But what I was available for, what I am available for when I'm in that state is, cuddles, being held, and my partner is good about that. But and this is the beauty of what that looks like, is that non-sexual touch can deepen intimacy. It can create a feeling of safety and nourishment that when you do finally get to sex, you can go deeper. And part of that is because, remember, I have said a gazillion times before that everything that happens before sex is foreplay. So that includes when your partner is exhausted and can't, or just doesn't have the bandwidth to have sex, and you show up being loving without expectations, when you can give them comfort without needing anything in return, not only does that build trust, but that is actually foreplay, right? That also gives your partner space to not have to perform, like to not have to be on all the time. They get to just be. And that kind of space, when you can hold that kind of space, that is an intimacy building block if ever there was one. So I mentioned before that I was in relationships with a partner who didn't understand that, where if I was, tired or whatever, even when it wasn't always obvious, sometimes it's subtle. And I was good about being direct about, how I'm feeling. So it wasn't like he had to guess, but there was sometimes pouting, guilt tripping, you're always tired, you're always this, we haven't had sex in X amount of days. Like sometimes it was passive aggressive, sometimes it was aggressive aggressive. But the message that sent to me was that my lack of energy was a problem. And over time, that response and that behavior eroded trust. Because again, it made me feel like I wasn't allowed to have human experiences. Like being tired wasn't acceptable. Like there was no room for my whole full self. And it made me feel like I had to be available no matter what. Like that's what his expectation was. Like my body belonged to his needs more than my own. And that didn't make me avoid situations, it didn't make me avoid social situations. But what it did do was it created resentment. You know, it made me very resentful toward the person I was with. Because when you can't show up as your full self, and that includes exhaustion, without feeling like you're going to be punished, it feels like a trap. It feels like a trap. And resentment will grow in the space. So before we talk about what holding space actually is, let's be clear about what it's not. Not holding space looks like you're lying down together, you can see that your partner is tired, and you start to do your sexual approach anyway. Moving in for the kill, testing to see if maybe they'll change their mind. That's not holding space. Or getting cold, your energy shifts, you're rolling your eyes, pulling away. Everything about your body language says that you're bothered because they're not available. Or maybe it looks like being direct. I guess we're not having sex again, right? Or turning away, scrolling your phone, just disconnecting. All of those things coldness, guilt trips, withdrawal, all of those things are signals that their depletion is inconvenient for you, that exhaustion is a problem that they need to fix. And there's a name for that kind of behavior. It's called being an asshole. It's called being an asshole. That's not partnership, it's entitlement. And entitlement kills intimacy faster than anything else. So if you are doing any of those things when your partner is feeling tired, you're not holding space, you're creating distance. Mhm. So what does it actually look like to be the partner who holds space when the other person is tired? It just means allowing them to be. No pressure to do anything, no agenda, no expectation that touch should lead somewhere. It just means leaning in and letting go. Let them be a receiver, but only if you can be a giver without needing anything back. Like if that's not you, then maybe you need to rethink some things. But I do want to acknowledge that holding space without expectations does not mean that you don't have feelings about it. You might be disappointed. If you wanted to have sex and you were feeling the mood and your partner isn't, you might be disappointed, and that's allowed. You might feel lonely or frustrated. That's allowed. Those feelings are valid. The emotional maturity is in accepting those feelings without acting on them. So you can feel disappointed or frustrated or whatever without applying pressure. You can feel those things without making your partner responsible for fixing how you feel, right? You can feel disappointed and not make it a problem. Two things can be true at once. You can honor your own feelings and hold space for your partner's fatigue. Because the only thing you have to do about feelings is feel them. Now, I do want to point out that emotional maturity is not just required for the person who is holding space, it is also required for the other person too. So, everybody's allowed to feel their feelings. So, again, if you are the tired party here, your partner is allowed to feel disappointed. And you can acknowledge that feeling without making yourself sexually available to them. You can acknowledge their disappointment in the same way that they can acknowledge your fatigue. Both people get to have feelings and both people get to express themselves, because emotional maturity is not about making those feelings someone else's problem to solve. It's just being able to acknowledge them, feel them, and let them go. Just accept the emotion and move forward. Everybody needs to be good at expressing their needs. That's essential. So if you're tired, you get to say, I'm out of gas. I would love to make love to you, but it would be so much better if we could put a pin in this for now and circle back after I'm replenished. That's clear, that's honest, that's enough. So being able to express that clearly so that there is no gray area is great. Sometimes when you've been in a relationship with someone for long enough, you don't have to be so explicit, but being explicit leaves the gray areas out, right? Being explicit leaves the gray areas out. I really cannot stress enough how being held when you are tired or fatigued or grieving or whatever is going on with you in a way that is neutral, sexually neutral. It doesn't mean that there can't be an erection. Let me just point that out, that sometimes the body does respond to physical stimulation. It doesn't always mean that sex has to happen. And we'll get into inconvenient erections on another day because that does happen. But when there is open communication and there is a willingness to allow everything in, all feelings, all experiences, all energies. That's how you build trust. That's how each of you can know that you are valued, even when you don't have anything to actively contribute because you are out of gas, right? But when you have that, sex can be better when it does happen. You can be present for it because you want to be there, right? You don't want to just go through the motions because that's not good. You want to be able to be fully present. And how to do that is often largely dependent on the moments that happen, the collection of moments that happens when you're not having sex. So if you are a partner who consistently holds space without expectation, you build this relationship where both people can feel safe enough to bring their full selves. Where, again, where exhaustion isn't a problem. It's just a human experience because being tired is, it happens, right? But it doesn't have to come with consequences of breaking down the relationships. You get to be empty and still be loved. And that kind of comfort, oh my God, it goes deeper than sex sometimes, because again, there's no earning of affection by being available. You just get to be. Before we talked about desire needing novelty to flourish, but desire also sometimes needs safety. It needs room to breathe. It needs space to not feel obligated. When you know that you can say no without being punished, you get to say yes from a place of authenticity. I mean, when you can be your whole self without it being held against you, then when you are available, it becomes a choice and not a duty. And let me tell you, duty-free sex is wonderful. Everybody wants to feel wanted. We all have the desire to be desired. And one of the ways that we can create that or help facilitate that is probably a better way to say it. One of the ways we can help facilitate that is by showing up genuinely and authentically enough for the other person to be genuine and authentic. We want to create connection and not obligation whenever we can. So in conclusion, and in conclusion, social exhaustion is real. Even when interactions are good, even when we're around people we loved, but also just being dog tired from not having a not great day, also real. But when your partner is running on empty and they come home and they just don't have anything to give, what you do in that moment matters. You know, if you can keep your expectations at bay, if you can be present without needing it to turn into sex, if you can give without needing something in return, that that is emotional maturity, and also being able to feel your own disappointment without blowing up the spot. When you can be that kind of partner, oh my God, your relationship will go to the next level. And you will feel better about yourself because let me tell you, nobody feels good about being a grumpy pants. Like, seriously, grouchy people don't feel good. So when you are having expectations and being an asshole, you do not feel good about it. So when you get to do something that feels nourishing for your partner, that helps you to feel good too. So I'm not saying that this is perfection. I'm not saying that there won't be times when your needs feel just as big as your partner's need for rest. That will be true sometimes. And being able to express, disappointment in a healthy way without it being burdensome takes practice. So that will happen sometimes. But my advice to you is practice being able to just be available for someone else's needs. And it'll be your turn. you'll get your turn. Don't worry. Life will happen to you too. And you'll be tired or grieving or whatever, and you'll need someone to hold space for you as well. You'll get your turn. But when the opportunity arises to be able to offer that to someone else, to your partner, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. If this episode resonated with you, I would love, love, love it if you'd share it with a friend or post it on your socials. And if you haven't already, follow the show so new episodes show up in your feed automatically. I don't know what we're going to be talking about in the next few episodes yet, but I promise you it's going to be good. So if you have a minute, leaving a 5-star rating and a short review really helps us to reach more people who need to hear these conversations. Thank you for being here. I wouldn't do this without you. So thank you for being here. And I don't know, we've got a lot of things that we could talk about in the next episode. I'm not sure what they are, so I'm not going to tell you, but either way, it's going to be good. So see you then. Ciao.